Oh, I'm Louise. I'm a member of Cocaine Anonymous. I am so frightened. And I am an addict. And I don't say that round that side of the room. So what does that mean for me? So it means that I am an addict. And it means that I will never, ever be able to resume control over a drink or a drug once I put one in me. And I'm unable to predict, if I have a drink, where that's going to lead. You know, there have been moments when I have had a drink, but the time after that, I've been very spiritually unfit, like really. And that was like playing Russian roulette, you know. I chanced that at that time, you know, and when I've had those moments, the in-between times have been absolutely horrendous. And I don't know why God has allowed me so much grace. I do not know, but I know that I was absolutely blessed that I was able to recoil and come here and do this stuff immediately afterwards. That hasn't been my story with heroin, you know. I'm not a cocaine addict. I'm not a crack addict. I hated weed. I hated acid. But I took it anyway. And knowing I hated it, I still took it again and again and again. But cocaine and crack, I've somehow managed to stay away from. But yeah, let me take you right back to the very beginning. So I'm going to honour my parents because my God, my understanding tells me to honour my parents and not antagonise my children. So I'm going to keep them out of it. And as we know, our childhood has very little to do with us being addicts and alcoholics. I was full of fear from a very early age. And there were circumstances that led to me having a really low self-esteem. I went to 5 different junior schools as a child. So I didn't feel different, but I had a reason to feel different, if that made sense. You know, a lot of people in here talk about they had that feeling of feeling different. Even brought up in really good homes, they felt different. I feel like for me, I had circumstances that led to me feeling different. So every time I went to a school, everybody was already established. You know, I was always the child that was trying to get into a group of people that were already established. And I think the worst ever feeling was being chosen for the hockey team as a new person in this new school. And, you know, they'd be choosing a captain. And I'd always be the last to be picked, you know, because I didn't have a peer group, you know. So I kind of always thought of that feeling different as it came from circumstances rather than it was my genetic makeup. That wasn't how it was when I went into the Provi in 1999, though. I did have that feeling of just being out of sorts. It was awful. So my journey with substances go. At 14, I wanted children, and my whole drive in life was just to be wanted and loved from external circumstances. And so at 14, I thought, I'm going to have children, I'm going to get pregnant, and they're going to love me forever, and I'm going to love them forever. And, you know, they're never going to leave me, I'm never going to leave them. And I moved from an area in Bristol. I moved from a really nice posh area where I was a ballroom dancer at 12 to becoming a glue-sniffing, drinking, promiscuous, right? And and that was great. That was really good. So alcohol gave me confidence. You know, the moment I drank it, I drank a whole bottle of Natch cider. Kissing a boy made me feel wanted and adored. And then eventually I ended up glucinosine, and that was my start journey. I think somebody here last week or the week before shared that they never ever tried stopping taking a substance. One just rolled into the other. And that was kind of my journey as well. Like, I never tried to stop drinking, I never tried to stop glucinosine, and then amphetamine became part of that cycle. So at 17 I started taking amphetamine, and then the drink wasn't happening, and the glue wasn't happening. And then I had that journey with amphetamine. I don't know what that made me feel, but it never made me feel very sent, I'd put it that way. I was always, I used to take a 1/4 ounce of amphetamine every day. That was 7 grams. And I used to intravenously use it. And and I also was in very, very toxic relationships where I was beaten like black and blue, hospitalised, head cut open. I was always in a toxic relationship. And I certainly wasn't then the person I am today, or the person I've become later on in my journey of substance abuse. I was very meek, I was very shy, and I didn't really have a lot of words in me to even, communicate, but I was in really, really toxic relationships, and I would make it. So I'm also a love addict. I'm a codependent love addict. I always say that I'm a love addict first, and then a drug addict, and I chased relationships to the point of insanity, and everything that they did to me I would make about myself. So if he beat me up because I was late home, it was because he cared. If he took sex from me without asking, I owed it to him because I was his partner and I deprived him of it for so long. If he cheated on me, it must have been my fault, because he wouldn't do it, right, if it wasn't my fault. So, in this program it says we have freedom from active addiction. And I'd really like to challenge that, because for me, I've had more than freedom from active addiction. I've had so much freedom from all the other insanities that I threw myself into. And eventually I become the abuser. That's what happened. I ended up becoming the abuser because I couldn't leave them relationships. So I did get pregnant. I switched from amphetamine to heroin, and within 7 months I was pregnant with my first child. I didn't even want to stop then, not really. I just didn't. I only recently, a couple of years ago, realised what any lengths meant. I mean, this is madness, because I've been around for years, right? I used to say I didn't go to any lengths. Like, I didn't do X, Y, Z. I didn't rob from my granny, or do armed robberies or solicit myself. I didn't do that stuff. And then in Ludo Lounge in Southbourne about 3 years ago, I was going through the book with somebody, and I had this light bulb moment. I thought, oh my goodness, I went to any length. So I'll give you two things that came up on that day. So one of the things was I'd given birth to my first child, and back then they would take the kids off to the nursery at night, or any time you wanted. If you wanted to sleep in the afternoon, the nurse would come in and say, "Shall I take Henry off to the nursery?" Be, "Oh yes, please." So in one of those moments, I left the hospital, went to St Paul's, and I went to score heroin whilst my newborn child is in the BMH waiting for his mother to feed him. And then the other thing was, when I was on amphetamine, I went through the St Paul's riots. There was like policemen shoulder to shoulder, fire bombs. I lived in Argyle Road in St Paul's. But I actually went through the fire bombs being thrown, the armed police with their riot shields, just to go and get amphetamine. It was absolutely chaos. So, I've had some really rude awakenings as well over the last couple of years, where I thought, oh my God, I did go to any lengths. And there's so much more any lengths that I could tell you about. Honestly, there really is. And another one was, somebody told me, because I thought, oh, I never robbed my parents. And then somebody in here said to me, no, you robbed them of their peace of mind. And that was a big ouch. That was like, ouch. So for many, many years, from 1988, maybe even before that, 86, right up to 97, I robbed my grandparents and my family of their peace of mind. So that's a big awakening as well. But I've been to 3 different treatment centres. I went to a Christian one with my children, 2 children. Then I went to another Christian one with 3 children and give birth to a 4th. And their ideas were to get a job, to get hobbies, and to try and do some parenting courses and not treat your children the way that you had been treated. And they had this brainstorming session one day. It was like, what could you do if the thought of using came on you? And all the girls would be putting their hands up and they'd be coming out with things like, go fly a kite at Freedom Fields in Plymouth, go and plant a plant in the garden, like go and join a such and such group, or meet up with your friends and have dinner. And I came out of there thinking that was the way forward. It was just like change people, change places, change things, and everything was going to be all right. But I came home, I was clean for about 4 months, something like that. And, like I said at the very beginning, it says, if we are going to use again, if we haven't got a power, we're going to use again. So, I had no idea that was what was going to happen. So anyway, as I was leaving that treatment centre, luckily, the lady that was there that was counselling me, she whispered in my ear, when you get home, check out the fellowships. It was another one that she mentioned, but she said, check out the fellowships. And then that was my introduction into the 12 steps. That was my introduction, into the 12 steps. God, dried up. So what have I gotten from this? When I came in, how I felt about myself was I had no self-esteem. I judged myself based on my thoughts, and some of the thoughts that I used to have were really awful. They were such intrusive thoughts. They were never positive. They were always negative. They all included some kind of harm towards myself or someone else. We now look at that as being resentments, right? But I judged myself based on my thoughts, and today I don't. I've got freedom from that. I've got a lot of freedom from that. And it's all right, Kathy. And so how have I got to that place? So it's been a journey. It's been an absolute, complete and utter journey. But one of the things that I was doing was I was being completely dishonest with myself. So it says in the book, doesn't it? It says we were constitutionally incapable of being honest with ourselves. So I had to start looking at where my dishonesty was lying. So I was working through the steps, but there were avenues that I wasn't being honest with. And for me, it doesn't say anything in the big book about relationships, right? It doesn't say that. It doesn't say we've got to stay in relationships or stay out of relationships. But if you're a gambler, you'd stay away from gambling, right? So if you're a love addict, it's probably a good idea that you have a couple of years on your own without a partner. So I would come in to the rooms and I would find him. And he would be, I'd have a long-term relationship. It might be a 4-year relationship. It might be a 3-year relationship. But he would be my comfort and ease. That was a dishonesty. He would be my God. He would be my cotton wool. I could be at home all day on my own. As long as I knew he was coming home at the end of the day, I could breeze through life. And the moment that anything went wrong, or I imagined anything was going to go wrong, then it was all over and over. It was like, it was like the first drink, or I want to kill myself, or, I've had, in 33 years, I've had 29 years clean, but it hasn't always been rosy, and I've had a lot of relapses, but those relapses have been very short. I'm blessed. They've been very short. And I've not looked at a relapse as being failure. My relapse has been like a chance to dig in and come back and really get stuck in and do something different. So in 2014, so the things that have been my God have been my children. My children have been my God. I'll just have another one. That'll make me feel different. I never thought they'd stop me from using, but I just thought, oh, I want another baby. That'll make me feel better. 5 babies later, I'm still not feeling enough. If I only have a him, I feel all right. So in 2014, even with a lot of clean time, but some messy clean time, I went to a group in Poole called How It Works, and they worked off of a 14 defect character list, and I embarked on a journey with a lady, and I went through all the steps, and during the process of step 4, I got to look at 14 character defects, and in one of the character defects for my 4th column, there was this word called lust. And the definition of that word was something like an overactive sexual desire obsession on heat. And I recoiled from that word. It was like, I act like I'm on heat. Like, when I'm fancying you. Like, and there's vibrations coming through the room, people can see that on you. It's just like, yuck. And so that was my journey of being completely honest with myself. And I've not been in a relationship. I'm going to cry because I've got so much freedom from it. I have not been in a relationship for 10 years. I've been honest with myself in that area for 10 years. I don't miss it. And I don't ever think about it. And since that time, then doing this stuff, it's taken on, I've taken it on, because there's nothing, I'm not saying nothing, of course there's always something, because we do infantry every day, right? We're a little bit dishonest with ourselves at times, but the big dishonesty was that being in a relationship for me was not what God wanted for me. He wanted me to trust him completely. And I couldn't trust God completely if I was relying on a man for a little bit of comfort. So I've allowed God in, I've really allowed God in. And I have to do a little bit more than just this stuff with my sponsor, like with the step work, with coming to meetings. I have chosen to enlarge on my spiritual life. I have chosen to follow a God that I can read about. I have chosen to follow a God that aligns with this book, that tells me to not lean on my own understanding, that tells me that if I pray to him, that he'll relieve me of anxiety, fear and worry. He tells me to trust in him for everything. And he never asks me to do many things that are comfortable. He always asks me to do the uncomfortable stuff, which is like this stuff right now, because, he wants to see me come out of the other side. So I've got something to build on, to look back to say, well, I did it then and that wasn't that bad, I can do it then. And that's all avenues, not just with this sharing. So when I came in, I thought I didn't like women. You get the generalisers that go, oh, it's because you can't manipulate women. You want to watch me manipulate a woman? I can manipulate a woman. I literally was scared of women because of my background. I was bullied as a kid by women and by girls. God wanted me to reach out and talk to women. God wanted me to have them uncomfortable conversations, the surface level chit chat that I hate. Give me a problem to talk about, I talk about it all day. Give me the steps to talk about, I talk about it all day. Being surface level chit chat, it wasn't my forte. But God has given me the courage, He's given me so much faith and courage to get out my comfort zone and talk to women that I thought I didn't like, that I do like, that are my best friends, that are my go-to the minute I've got a problem. I love helping women. that is where it's at for me. I love it. And if it wasn't for these 12 steps getting me out of the way, because that's what this is about. I came in here with a belief in my God, but I couldn't hear my God because this got in the way of him speaking to me. But in step 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, I get to get out of the way so that I can go home. I can sit with myself in my house without anyone arriving home for tea, without having to frantically help people, because I used to do that to extreme. I help people now if I can. If it's practical, it's spiritual, right? If it's not practical, it's not spiritual. But I used to use helping people as an escapism, same as with the man, with the children, whatever. You know, yours might be gambling, shoplifting, it might be a partner. You know, your partner might be your comfort and ease. This keeps me connected to the God of my own understanding. And I hope I continue to do this, because my head sometimes tells me I don't like this stuff, you know, and that's what I'm up against. I'm up against this. It tells me lots of lies, and I'll leave it there. Thank you.